Good afternoon, writers, and welcome to the 8th session of the Write That Book Now writing course. So today I'd like to talk about show and tell. Not the stuff you do at school when you're a kid, but as a writer. And as a writer, I'm sure you've heard show and tell over and over and over again. And most of us are being constantly told to don't tell, but show. However, in life, as in everything, it's about moderation, as the Buddhists would say. Moderation in all things. So, what I'd like to do is just explain it, give you 3 examples, and then give you 4 helpful rules for description, which is where the show and tell kind of fits in. Well, they call it exposition. Exposition is description about people, about events, about places. So exposition or description is not dialogue. It's or characters' thoughts or anything that will dramatize it. It's basically describing something, someone, or an event, a scene, person, or event. So, what's the difference and what are they? So telling is like a you're telling your mother what you did when you were at school or something. So you don't drag your mother into the emotional feeling of everything that happened. You tell her the minimum. Well, us boys did anyway. So you just describe, I did this, I did that, he did this, she did that, and that's what happened. So it's like this sort of separation in a way of telling somebody about it, but not bringing them into the scene or the event, the experience. So it's kind of like a slightly distant way of telling someone about it. So you kind of summarized and you tell the reader simply what happened. Showing is doing our best as writers to bring the reader in to experience it as we are experiencing it, or as our characters are experiencing it if it's fiction. If it's non-fiction, we try and bring people in to experience our pain and joy and everything else as we experienced it. So there's a lot more, let's say, color. There's a lot more of the senses, feeling, taste, smell, seeing, hearing. So there's a lot more of those senses being involved with showing. Whereas telling is da 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 da. And showing is using the environment, using the feelings, using all of the sounds around and all of the smells and all of the feelings to, as a reader, I then stand in your shoes. So it's a slightly more, I'm right there. So it brings the reader into the scene and engages the reader more, and it brings us more into alignment, if you like, or more engaging with the story. So I'm going to give you 3 examples, just say a little bit more, and then give you the 4 perhaps helpful rules. So the first one is telling. When they embraced, she could tell he had been smoking and was scared. Just a very short sentence. This happened. The showing was when she wrapped her arms around him, I'll do that again. When she wrapped her arms around him, the sweet staleness of tobacco enveloped her, and he shivered. So she smelt it. She was there, and it's like we were there, embracing him and the smell of cigarette and the feeling of his fear. So here's another one, and I think this is much better, more kind of distinct. So the telling is very short. Candice was I'll say that again. Candice was anxious about how late she was. That tells us she was anxious. The showing is Candice's eyes flashed to her phone. 9:33. She picked up a pace so that it matched that of her heart, scampering down the hall. She had yet to climb 2 floors before reaching class. Again, her eyes flashed to the clock. 9:35. Couldn't time slow down just for one morning? So that's showing. And the third one is a little less distinct, but it tells you a slight distinction. So the first part is telling. It was eerily quiet on the road until the sound of footsteps terrified me. The showing is crunching hit my ears from behind, accelerating the already rampant pounding of my heart. So in this one, we've got the sound or the crunching hit my ears. That's the actual sound I heard. Whereas in the telling, it's just the sound of footsteps. The showing is, what did those footsteps sound like? And then also my heart was going. So those are three examples. And the second example about Candice, what you will notice particularly is that generally telling is much, much shorter. Da 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 da. That happened. The tell. The showing brings in more emotion, brings in more color, brings in more of the five senses and even other senses, intuition and stuff. So it generally is longer. The risk or the trick is, because it's longer, it needs to be very powerful writing to engage the reader. Otherwise, if we waffle on and on and on and on, trying to show with too much exposition, description, the reader's going to go, oh, God, get over it, just tell me what happened. So there's that fine balance. And as I said before, as we all know, moderation in all things. So a lot of people think that the only thing you must do is show. No, we must do tell as well. Sometimes the writing needs telling. Just get on with it. Particularly if it's a thriller or an exciting moment or tense moment, then telling sometimes is much more effective. Just get through to the action. This happened, then this happened, and then the action, or whatever. And then we can slow the pace down and do the showing. So generally showing is a little more, take a breath, but it can bring in a lot of tenseness and a lot of anxiety if needed. Just remember though that showing is generally more words. And so we have to make it very, very powerful, not waste the reader's time with the showing. So I don't know if that helps. And so the last little thing which kind of might help with the explanation is there's 4 rules. So these will be written down in under the video and the podcast, so you'll be able to read them as well. So the first one is, do not lead with exposition. Do not lead with description. So when you're starting a story or starting a scene, starting a book, don't start with description. We want to get the reader engaged immediately. So use as much dialogue, well, they call it the narrative hook, the story that hooks the reader in. So we don't want to go on about the color of this and the da 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 da, the sheep down there were doing this and that. Get the reader becoming part of the story. Get the reader into that first page. So you can use dialogue, you can use description, and use the character's thoughts. But whatever you use, it probably needs to be a little mixed, not just description. So don't lead with exposition or description. The second thing is match your exposition or match your description to the pace. So the faster the pace of the story that you're writing, or this part that you're writing now, the faster the pace, the less you have of show and the more you have of tell. So thrillers generally have more tell than show. Romantic comedies or historical romances often have a lot more show, because it's generally generally, not always, generally less action. And so you can sort of slow it down and bring the reader into the emotional, all of the sensual feelings and knowings. Whereas the thriller, if you like, or the fast-paced moment, and we all balance this, every book probably should have slower pace and fast pace and slower pace. So the faster pace will have more tell, the slower pace will have more show. The third rule is try to alternate shown scenes with told scenes. Alternate show and tell, show and tell. So there are people out there who've taken the show thing on board, over the top. We do need to balance show and tell, because otherwise it just gets kind of boring. And too much show slows it all down. Too much tell, as a reader, we feel like we're not quite in the book. We're not quite in the story. We're kind of watching from a distance. So the tell kind of moves it forward faster. The show brings us into it. So there's a balance, and we need to use both of them. So that's 3. Always show you. So 4 is always show your climax. So this is true whether the opposing forces are, 2 armies, or there are 2 values, maybe inside a character's soul. So there's the clash. So you need to show the climax, if you like, there's usually a climax of some sort. Make it as vivid as you can. And bear in mind, again, that balance in all things. And so dramatizing the climax, you need to be very aware of, is it a fast climax or is it a slower one? Show or tell. You will know. So use all of those things, a bit like the start in a way. You use as many of the narrative hooks as you can. So you've got dialogue, you've got action, which is kind of tell. You've got description, which can be tell and or show, thoughts and feelings, and that will bring us to this amazing climax of your book. And people will be really disappointed because there's no more left. They want to read more. So they'll read the next book if you've written a sequel. So that's a little bit about show and tell. I hope it clarifies it. And so your mission this week, should you choose to venture into it, is some homework. So I've just got, sorry, there are 3 tell sentences that I've got here, and see if you can turn any of them or all of them into a show. You'll probably be more than one sentence. So the tell is one sentence. The show will probably be more than one sentence. So again, show is always more than tell. So the first one is, my mother was being overprotective. How can you write that as a show to bring us into the experience of you having a mother who's overprotective? What did it feel like? What does it feel like? The second one is, Harry rushed out of the house in anger. So you're watching Harry run out of the house. So you want your reader to be there with you, watching Harry run out of the house in anger. What's going on? All of those show things. And the last one is, it was autumn and very cold outside. Very simple facts. How do you bring somebody into that feeling of autumn and the temperature, cold? So there's 3 little exercises. I wish you fun with it. And I wish I'd love to see your stories sent to me. And we can have fun with this. My blessings to you all.